from last time to post it yet, but all but that one lecture last Tuesday has been recorded. So if you do miss something, jump in there and get after that. All right, so back to this list of shifters. These are the things that can change the amount that you want and everybody else wants at a given price. A bit of semantics that always seems to trip up people is that if you change the price, that doesn't change the demand. You say, well, how can that be? I want more if the price is lower. I want less if the price is higher. See, demand doesn't mean the quantity demanded per se. Okay? Demand means that function, to use that awkward term that keeps coming up. Demand means that whole line, the relationship between price and quantity. That's what the term demand means. Okay? Just changing the price, okay, not changing any of these 7 things, the price of the good itself changes only the quantity demanded of that good. Not going to change the demand or supply of other things. For example, if you look at number 3 on the list, I was going to point to it. That doesn't. Anyway, number 3 on the list, things used to get used as alternatives. Right, number 3, price as substitutes. If you change the price of one thing and just the quantity demanded of it changes, you will change the demand of other things. Right, like if you change the price of apples, you'll change the quantity demanded of apples, but not change the demand for apples. But you will change the demand for pears. Okay? Pears are reasonably close substitutes for apples for a lot of things. Okay? If apples get more expensive, you can sell more pears for $1 a pound than you could before. Okay? See, the amount for a given price has changed. Okay? So you need to practice. That's what studying is, with that semantics, to not let that trip you up. And we'll have some top hat questions here in a minute to see if that worked. And see, that's the whole idea of that learning curve, those self-assessments is, you know, you read and you nod and smile, you think, yeah, I think I got it. And then you do the self-assessment, whoops, I didn't have it. See, otherwise you might not know that till you get into the graded stuff. See, and then you get into the graded stuff and say, the self-assessment helped, but there's still more that needs to be done. And maybe not more needs to be done because we're all awfully busy and the chances of you finding even more time for this are probably fairly low for most of you. But the key is typically using your time differently and figuring out how to use your time better, not finding more of it. And I've been doing this long enough to know that most of you have fairly close to full-time jobs, 30 hours a week, 30-something usually. You're taking 4 or 5 classes. I know people that have figured out how to do that pretty well, but I know a vast majority of them can't do that very well. It's one of those denial, not being a river in Africa kind of things. But anyway, there you are for the moment, and that's what you're trying to do. You think you can do it, and we'll see. Okay? I mean, you do have to have a certain amount of time and to do things, and if it isn't much, you better use that time really efficiently. You better learn from every one of your misses how to use your time more efficiently. All right, with that said, we will temporarily go back to this and take attendance. Then we'll go back to the PowerPoint. All right, so you've got about 30 seconds here to enter that code. And by the way, I'm not playing gotcha here. If you don't show up at all, but you're doing great, it means you're taking the class like it's an online class. I have no problem with that. It's not going. Your no attendance is not going to hurt you a bit. Now, where the bad attendance comes in is if you come and tell me I'm really struggling in class, or later on, you know, that comes up and say, well, you know, so and so was taking financial aid and didn't come to class. That doesn't look very good. Okay, so, all right. Has that been 30 seconds? That's what they tell me to do. See the little circle, you know, like on your computer when you're waiting for something, the circle. I'm faking it. All right, good enough. Okay, so what do you learn from that if you didn't get all that taken? Well, maybe get to class on time and have that device fired up towards the beginning of class so you don't stumble through that. All right, so back to the PowerPoint, back to, let me see, reload, doesn't take long. Back to where we were. See, and here's one of those other things that you need to be doing as a student. And I'll go to full screen mode in a minute. But I think this is sort of where we left off last time. I remember going over stuff about vertical and horizontal and line shifts and all that. I'm not sure. I forgot to mark down exactly where we left off. So part of what you should be doing between classes is going over some of this old stuff and coming to class saying, Doc, hold on. Before you get into new stuff, remember, this is not about conveying material. This is about clarification. So if some of the old stuff is needing clarified, that's what we're here for. Whoa, Doc, that last slide you did last time, whether it's this one or some other thing, I looked at that in the 5 days since the last class, and I thought I had it when I walked out of the room. And I looked at it later on, and now between that and the learning curve and some other things, no, it was obvious I didn't have it. Go over that again for me, would you please? And, some specifics, so I don't have to wonder exactly what it is that I failed to make adequately clear. Right? That's a good thing to do between classes. Don't build all that stuff until the last minutes before the exam, and then, whoops, too late, can't find the professor or whatever at that point. Try to do it in little bits and pieces as you go along. Does anybody want to do any of that? Because you looked at stuff between now and Thursday. Okay? So every bit of that, I'm being a little sarcastic here, every bit of that you understood really well, right? No. Been doing this long enough that I know that's not true. Okay? So you're kind of building a bigger cloud here because things are cumulative, right? New stuff gets built on old stuff. All right, so here's the list. Okay, no reason to say anything about it here other than what I've already said, because each item on the list gets its own slide or 2 or 3. All right, now this one does merit some clarification. Because see, most things are normal goods. If you had more money, you'd buy more of them. Okay? But a lot of things are inferior goods. And the key thing to understand about an inferior good is that no good can be inferior to all people at all income levels. If that were the case, the good wouldn't exist to begin with. Let me give an illustration. Let's suppose you're really poor in some destitute part of the world, maybe even parts of America, and your income increases, and you buy more rice. That's what you've been living off of. A lot of people on Earth, that's their main thing that they eat, and they just barely get by if they do, with the rice that they eat every day. If they had more money, they'd buy themselves a little more rice. But if they keep getting more and more money, eventually they'll buy less rice. See, so that makes rice, here's that term again, an inferior good, right? Because it means that at some point in the income progression, you decide to diversify your diet because now you have the money and you can do it. And so maybe instead of eating just rice or 90% rice, you back off and now it's 60 or 70%, and you do some potatoes and some corn and some other things. Okay, but up to that point, let me repeat the key phrase again. No good can be inferior to all people at all income levels. Otherwise it wouldn't exist. Okay, because otherwise if you went from zero income to some income and you bought less of it, how could you buy less of it than none at all? Can't. Okay, so as your income goes up from zero to more, the vast majority of virtually everything is a normal good. But at some point in your progression as you have more income, there are some things that you will start buying less of. Now, people differ. Maybe that happens to you when your income level hits $10,000 a year. For the identical product, maybe for somebody else, from $10,000 to $11,000, they keep buying more of that, whatever that is, the rice, the potatoes, okay, whatever, something that they, the cheap beer. It made me a good example that a college student can relate to. Yeah, boy, that beer is cheap. It's all right. It gives me a buzz. But boy, if I had more income, I'd buy that good stuff. I wouldn't buy that off-brand beer that comes in a white can with just BEER on it. Never seen that, but there's probably somewhere out there where I've seen that for other products, not lately, that it just says beans on it, and that's it. Well, okay. If you have to, that's the way to keep your stomach from growling, great. But if you have more money, you would buy better beans or something else. All right, so does anybody want to give the thumbs down and say they still don't get it, or thumbs up and say, okay, I get this concept on inferior goods, or better yet, some Q&A on it? Because see that, again, I think if you think back to about 5 minutes ago, you think, wow, I didn't realize that from reading the book. This thing about inferior goods. Boy, I'm glad that was clarified for me. Or the attempt was made and was maybe only partially successful. Any Q&A on further clarification? of this concept of, okay, at very, very low income levels, virtually everything's a normal good. More money, you buy more. But gradually, as the income level increases, depending on your tastes and preferences, you'll start switching to other things and buying less of some things. Okay, no comment on this. I think this is a duh. Okay, I think it is. I'm not sure. Maybe there's some aspect of it that isn't obvious. Okay, a dangerous word for a professor to utter. You think that's obvious? You're saying I'm stupid. No, I'm not. I'm doing the best I can based on 30 years' experience to imagine how this would need further for clarification, and humble me, didn't think of any. Time is precious. We'll move on. Absent the hand up to say otherwise. Remember, a fragile ego is a serious learning disability. Okay, now the reason that this might merit some clarification is there's two kinds of substitutes. The ones that we are most often used to and that we can study by studying ourselves, because we're constantly making switches based on changes in circumstances, including price. And price can sometimes be not just the money, but hey, it's further to get it now, or some other aspect of it that makes it cheaper or more expensive than it used to be. There are those kind, the consumption substitutes. We're all used to thinking like consumers of things. But there also are production substitutes. Farmers understand that probably better than anything, because that's the main thing that they ponder every spring, is what crop to plant. Among the many things that will grow in their climate area based on the amount of rainfall that they get and that they have the tools and know-how to grow, what things should they plant and what mix, depending on how many acres they have. Those are production substitutes, and we'll get into that more later, the specifics of that when we get into the supply shifters. Okay, but this particular slide here, sorry, a little distraction there with the noise going on outside the room. The demand shifter here is the characteristics, including price, of things that are alternatives for the product at issue. Remember, I do concrete examples. So let's see, what's something you can use in place of concrete for at least some uses? Wood, okay, steel, maybe, okay. Those are consumption substitutes. What about oil? That's the one that Cowan and Tabarrok talk about in the book. Okay? There are direct and indirect substitutes for oil, and that's important to understand that. Let's say the price of gasoline goes up. It's made from oil. Okay? You can make some indirect substitutions. Your car won't run anything other than gas, right? So there's no direct substitute. You can't put something different in your gas tank. But you could take the bus, right, instead of driving somewhere. That's an indirect substitute. Okay? So let's see, if the price of petroleum goes up, which means the price of gasoline will go up, there'll be an increased demand for bus space, okay, or for buses to take you someplace. Okay? So there's consumption substitutes in action. People will get their cars tuned up more often. There's another indirect substitute, right? Because it helps you get by on less gas. Okay? Okay, Q&A? No? All right. Well, yeah, we probably better save the thumbs up and down for if you have a question and I ramble too far on answering it. Because otherwise there'll be a mix, and then some people have the, so. All right, what about compliments? We all love compliments. No, not that kind. No. We're talking about things used together, right? So a lot of iced tea drinkers put some lemon in there and some sweet and low. Right? Those are consumption compliments. Again, there's the two kinds. And even Cowan and Tabarrok, they were a little on the careless side, not putting the word consumption in front of the word compliment if it's consumption compliment they're talking about. Because there are production compliments. Production compliments, which we'll get into more detail and have some examples with later, because that's probably the most difficult aspect of supply and demand is production substitutes and production, because we're not used to thinking like that unless we've been farming, probably. But we are used to thinking about consumption complements, things used together. Peanut butter and jelly. Things widely used together. And let's see, chapter 4, is it 4 or 5? It varies from one edition to the next. We'll talk about elasticities. So those are ways to measure. One kind of elasticity measures the degree to which something is a consumption substitute or a consumption complement, by how big or small the number is. Okay? So we can measure the degree to which things are used together with a number called an elasticity, a couple chapters after the first exam. Okay, so things used together. If the price of one of them goes up, right, you use less of the other ones that are used with it quite often. Right, so if you work for Smucker's, look out if the price of peanut butter goes up, right, because that'll reduce the demand for jam and jelly that's made by Smucker's. Okay, those are things you have to monitor as part of a business, right? If some of you are going to go off in a business career, you better be monitoring the prices of consumption substitutes and complements in managing the business that you would be involved in. Okay, here's another one that's sort of in the duh category. Right? If you expect something to increase in price, if you can store it, you buy more now, right? If it's storable. And if you expect the newspaper to get more expensive in the future, you don't buy more of today's newspaper. Right? Because that's kind of obsolete by tomorrow. Okay? But things that can be stored, okay? Like if you think the price of gas was going to be a lot higher tomorrow, a lot of you go top off the tank today, right? Okay? So notice that creates what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy situation. Yeah. In other words, if there's a rumor out, whether it's true or not, that the price of gasoline is going to jack up big time tomorrow, a lot of you went out and topped your tanks off as a result, that would cause the price of gasoline to increase, right? Because that would increase the demand, right? It's a demand shifter. So the price would have to rise to avoid a shortage, right? To ration out what's available. And so whether the rumor was true or not, at least for temporarily, the price of gasoline would be driven up by the expectation of something that may or may not actually happen. Okay, again, I think 6 here is kind of duh. Oh, yes.
So expectation is usually done to avoid scarcity.
Say what?
Expectation is usually used or done to avoid scarcity.
Sorry, something about expectations. Yes, scarcity.
Yeah, to avoid to have abundance of that supply or demand.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the issue, scarcity, of course, is everywhere, and that's why prices are above zero, right? If it's not scarce means the price is zero. Okay, so, yeah, the issue is the price, but yeah, underlying that is it's going to become more scarce. If your expectation is the price is going to go up, that means that there is the expectation by those selling it that it's going to get more scarce, and therefore they can raise their price and get away with it. I don't know if did that do this, or is it trains passing in the night there? Okay. Yeah, scarcity is what price reflects. Scarcity is not just about physical availability. Scarcity has two dimensions, demand and supply. Okay, there can be very little of something, but if there's no demand for it, it's not scarce. Or there can be a lot of something, but if there's a lot of demand for it, it can be very hard to find, and price can skyrocket. Okay, it was one of the thumb went up, so I should move on. All right. Okay, so again, I think that's, if we like something, we're willing to pay more for it. We don't, no, we don't. All right, so here's a slide that gets into that, what I said earlier about a bit of semantics. It's worth saying often because invariably somebody is tripped up by that, and well, hopefully with the top hat questions, that'll help us not have that happen. All right, let me go ahead and draw that up on the board here. All these little nubs of chalk. Oh, here's a bigger nub of chalk. Okay, quantity. Q is always about some amount per time period. I'm going to have to get after my buddy Tabarrok. I know Alex from seeing him at conferences fairly often. He put his MBD or whatever on his thing. There's no time dimension. It doesn't say per year, or per week, or per day. Oh well, I'll get after him. It'll give me a chance to harass him a little bit. Okay, so here's the demand for something, which says the function, right? That's what the word function is referring to, is is the entire relationship, plotting all the price-quantity combinations. Okay, a change in quantity demanded means movement along the line because either the price has changed, probably a shift in supply is probably what's going to change the price. Okay, or, remember, it can happen from either starting point, or for some reason the amount available has changed, so the price had to adjust for that all to be sold. Remember that price guarantee thing that I used as an example last time? If the government sets a certain price, the farmers will make a certain amount, and then it'll be dropped on the market, and the price will rise and fall until that amount is sold. Okay, so that's where you start off with a quantity, and from that you end up with a new price. Okay, either vertically, starting with a quantity, that's what price it'll take for it to all sell. That'll clear the market, a common term. Okay, or starting with the price. Maybe that was the original price. And at that price, you can sell that many. Okay, that's the horizontally, just to reuse those terms from a few slides ago from Thursday. Here's the point where I said, okay, just preparing for class. We're going to try some top hat questions. So here's the point for you to think a little bit about how comfortable you are with this so far. You didn't ask any questions, so comfortable enough, I guess. Well, maybe you're thinking, okay, there's going to be the top hat questions. That's the way I can be sure. All right, cool, you've adapted. All right, so here's the first one. Get those devices fired up, okay, because we're going to have a Q&A here. And, okay, I guess it doesn't matter where I scroll. You can see it either way. A fall in gasoline prices quickly. Make sure you read all the choices. See, now part of this process is, if you miss it, why? Did you read the chapter a little bit too swiftly? Did you rely on just eyes moving over paper as a way to absorb new information and learn things? That typically doesn't work very well. What was it about your preparation process that didn't work? Maybe you should have asked a question a couple minutes ago. These are all the things to determine from when you miss it, or maybe you've got a 1 in 5 chance of getting it right if you know nothing. Some of the times you get the test back and you go, boy, I wasn't sure on that one, and I guessed that one, and wow, I was right. Well, okay, fine. You lucked out. Okay, maybe you ought to be able to ratchet things up a little bit to get to where you know why it's the right answer and not just lucked out. Okay, so that's part of this too. Not just misses, but where you lucked out. All right, let's move on to the report, which... no. See, now we've got some work to do because B is the only right answer. B is correct. Let's talk about the other one. Increases the demand for gasoline. You just got tripped up by whatever I did here didn't work. See, I get a little feedback out of this too. Okay, let's go back to the question. A fall in gasoline prices increases the demand for gasoline. No, it doesn't. It does not shift that line. It moves you along the line. A bit of semantics, yes. Oops, tripped and fell. Okay, see, that's the reason for this in part. Help me out. Maybe there's some other way I can explain it to have a little higher success rate than before you all trip and fall and discover that you thought you had it, but you didn't really have it. I don't know. I meant that seriously. I don't know, Doc, if you'd said this, that would have worked, Put it online, email, whatever, some way. Okay, and a lot of you put E, so let's rule out some of these others. Increases the demand for bus rides. A fall in the price of gasoline increases demand for, I don't think so. Oh, wait a minute, that's all, E says all but C. Harms oil companies. Oh, let's see, it depends on what oil companies do. But here, one of the reasons that I left D there as a tempting answer was because I want to remind you about question protest. You could justify D. You could say, well, here's what I assumed about oil companies, because you had to assume something about them. If they are heavily into refining, okay, maybe it does harm oil companies. Okay, but maybe depending on their product mix, maybe it helps them. How do oil companies make money? They make money on the spread between what it costs them and what they can charge you. Okay, so if price-lean gases fall, does that necessarily do that? Anyway, it could. You could make a justification for that. But by far the best answer, because it definitely does this, and why does it do that? How are motorhomes related to gasoline? What term did we just introduce a couple minutes ago? Consumption complements. Guzzling, right? High intensity. I mean, 6 or 7 or 8 miles per gallon kinds of consumption complements, right? Even if you have the big bucks to buy a motorhome, they're still pretty sensitive to the price of gas. Okay? They're used together, right? Lots of gasoline to use a motorhome. So, and this has been proven over and over again in reality, that Winnebago stock or other big companies that make motorhomes, their stock goes down, the price of gas goes up. The price of their stock goes up because their sales go up when the price of gasoline goes down. Okay, well, that was a good question then, because that got after a whole lot of things. And we've got some Q&A. That's even better. Yes.
So if A said increases the quantity demanded for gasoline, would that be correct?
Yes. Bingo. And you've just hit upon how a lazy, busy person, I'm not so lazy, but very busy, they're all busy, makes up an exam. Maybe you'll see this question again with just a couple words changed. Yeah. Or, that looks familiar. Oh, yeah, I remember the answer was B. Bingo, move on. Whoops. Read carefully. Read carefully, because I only change a couple words here and to change which is the right answer. I could change B, I could change increase to decrease. Right? Then there wouldn't be a right answer anymore other than B. D would be the best then. Okay, but still sort of marginal. Okay? Or a rise in gasoline prices quickly does something, right? Change the question. And maybe as you're looking at this, you look at it, probably not in this case, you're not sure what the question asked. That'll come up probably in some of the other ones. What does that tell you about your preparation process? Inadequate work on understanding key terms. So I get that a lot from students. Doc, I never got to the answers. I had no idea what the question asked me to do. Well, yeah, that's part of what's going on here. That's part of the test, right? Having the question laden with terms from the chapter tests whether you understand the question. All righty, we'll move on to the next one. All right. See, first exam September 15th. Let's see, so we'll have through chapter 4 on that exam. So, finish chapter 3 this week, 4 next. Okay, so let's see how we are doing. A couple more minutes here. Now, as I'm giving a little more time, what you should have done, and since I haven't stopped it yet, what you still can do is, let's see, did I give this, okay, just X, right? There's your starting point. Okay, helps to draw it. All right, and then you can see it, and you can determine which of those is best visually. All right, now we're getting up to stratospheric levels here. Let's disable the submissions and see what happened. Okay, answer is all of the above. All right, let's get into each of these. Okay, the supply of X increases. Okay, so that's an increase. Right is an increase, left is a decrease. That's better than up or down. See, especially for supply, because it looks like it went down. All right, how do you test? More is available at the starting point price than was before. See, that's what drives the whole process. You know, it's not like all the producers of the good are somehow in contact by cell phone or internet or something. It's all of a sudden, if there's a supply increase, there's more available than they can sell. Okay, and so to compete, they have to lower price. And as they lower price, some of them pull back some supply and more is purchased, right? So we reach a new equilibrium. Okay, so this is Q1, and Q1 is quantity supplied and quantity demanded, so those are both increased. Okay, and of course the supply increased. Okay, so the supply of X increases. Let's go back and refresh my memory on what the question is. Okay, quantity demanded increases when the price of X. Okay, so if we increase the supply, the quantity demanded increases from Q0 to Q1. Let's see, the price of X is reduced, say, by a price ceiling. Okay, so so here's our P1 from charting out what A means. Okay, let's just so we don't have to add any more things on. Let's suppose a price ceiling is imposed at P1. Okay, well, that'll increase the quantity demanded, how much people want, from Q0 to Q1. Now, will they get it? No. But they want it. That's what quantity demanded means. Right? If apartment rents were capped at a lower level than they are now, more people would seek to have their own apartment rather than sharing it with somebody or living at home with mom or dad or something else. But unfortunately, many of them would be disappointed because at this low price, the quantity supplied is less than it was before, and there would be a shortage of apartments. Right? That's what happens whenever there are rent controls imposed. People trying to vote themselves cheaper housing end up, if they have housing and the apartment isn't converted to some other use, their rents go down. But if they're not yet in an apartment, then they can't find one because fewer are available. All right, a higher price for X's substitutes. Quantity demanded increases. See, now how do you handle questions like this? In the abstract with X and some other good that's unnamed? No, park in your head an example of consumption substitutes, okay? Like apples and pears. If the price of pears were to go up and X is apples, would there be an increased quantity demand for X? Yeah, makes good sense. All right. A lower price paid for something other often used with X. That's consumption complements. Just a second, let me just go through the last one here. Okay, so if something is the same thing, park in your head an example that you can think through of consumption complements, peanut butter and jelly. Okay, so if X is peanut butter and a lower price for jelly, that would increase the quantity demanded for X, lower price for jelly. Okay, question.
C and D, we just talked about were demand shifters, correct?
Yes.
We weren't talking about quantity demand, so is it safe to assume that?
Yeah, but see, you can have changes in quantity, demand. You can have changes in quantity demanded without changes in demand. But the other way around, no.
No, so every time the demand actually shifts, the quantity demand also shifts.
Yes. Okay, and also likely if the supply changes, the quantity demand changes. Very good. Yes. Good clarification. Okay, let me repeat that one more time. The quantity demanded can change without the demand changing. But if the demand changes, yeah, quantity demand is going to change too. Okay, are you thinking through how you could have been better prepared for that, either today or in reading before class? Good, so that's part of this process, is making you better students, not just the specific content that we're going over. All right, let's move on to the next one. Does anybody else want to discuss why any of these are true? Yes.
The answer was E, correct?
Yes, all of the above.
Okay, so the part that makes A true is quantity demanded in the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it had just said demand, it wouldn't have been true.
Yeah, if A had said the demand for X increase, that would be not true. Right. Oh, wait a minute, no. Quantity demand does increases when the demand for the good increases as well. Yeah. But if it said the price of X changes, and then does the supply of X change? No. Does the demand for X change? No. If the starting point is a change in price, that's not a shifter, for either demand or supply. But if the starting point is a shift of either line, then both quantity demanded and quantity supplied change. Now, it turns out that if you shifted both lines, both supply and demand, it's possible they could cancel each other out and quantity demanded or supplied wouldn't change. For example, let's suppose, okay, so here's the new equilibrium, so let's suppose the demand increased. Okay, so, oops, I'm sorry. That's the new equal. So those line up there. Okay, at the original equilibrium, suppose if the supply had increased, okay, and the demand would have to decrease to keep you at no change in the quantity. Okay, so that's possible with a double shift, but unlikely. Yes? Sorry, I thought I saw your hand go up there. Did we get a thumbs up or still? I think I'm trying to read your face, and I'm seeing this rather than this. Between an inverse relationship between. No, they're entirely independent of each other. The supply is about things that affect the production of the good, and the demand. No, and the quantity demanded, those are effects, not causes. In other words, it's because of the shifts, because of a change in price of something. And then if there are shifts, it's because of those that the quantity demanded or supplied would change. Good. Appreciate your persistence. I mean that sincerely. Because a lot of shy people here are benefiting from our discussion. Feeling relieved that they didn't have to ask. Not wanting to be in the spotlight. Okay? Don't anybody say we flew through this too fast. Some of you are saying, come on, move on. Well, I feel a little tension in the air. Maybe that's my imagination, but I'm not sure we are ready to move on. Well, there's more. There's the learning curve. There's graded homework. There's the constant ability to reassess and see where you are, get feedback. Yes, the graded homework, somebody said, well, I don't get any feedback on it. Yes, you do, at the due date, not before. I can't give you instant feedback because if you finish the homework assignment before someone else, you'll have the answers, and we can't make them public until we make them public for everybody at the due date. And the reason for the second possible attempt is twofold: technical difficulties possibility, and if you are sure you messed up something, Oops, major oops. Okay, it's not to give you 2 shots to optimize your score. It's not like golf where you take the best effort. It's, we're trying to see what you can do, not see, I wasn't sure on that one. Let me try it again with a different answer. Give me the better of the 2. No, your last attempt is the one that it keeps. Okay, so don't go in there shopping for different answers just to see if that'll work out better. All right. Now let me just say something as we're kind of getting partway through this. If you didn't draw a graph and put that information on it or know how to do it, major signal about your preparation process and why it's not working. Okay, because that's the only way you're going to get this. See, and part of this question is, Doc, what's the maximum willingness to pay? What on earth is that? Where does that pop up in this? Yeah. So, well, let's just see how well you do based on where you're at, and so you can assess that. See, if you can't draw a graph with that information on it, major hint about the need to retool, right, to reconsider how you prepare. Because you will not learn it just by your eyes moving over your screen or your paper. It will not happen. You need to engage your hand, engage your brain, do things to get it to sink in. Okay, here's what you needed to have done. I'm going to leave this up here and just kind of work around it. Okay, so here's your demand line. Okay, so here's the prevailing price. It says maximum willingness to pay. That's that. I think that's it. Did it say 80? Yeah. Okay, that's what you needed to have drawn based on that information. See, without understanding that about a supply line, you're just playing with stick figures, memorizing stuff you don't understand. All right, let's go on to, we're up to 90%, kind of diminishing returns at that point. Whoops, I got to disable submissions, and then we'll see how we did. Oh. Okay, well, more reality checks. That's why we're here. Okay, the consumer surplus is the difference between willingness to pay, value, and the $14 that you actually have to pay. Okay, so it's the area of this triangle bounded by these 2 lines. It's there was a slide, you might have remembered it. Remember the one that has the little president's consumer surplus on it? And I said, where did the president come from? Well, the earlier slide had a picture of Air Force One. Okay, and then there's another little picture on the side there that said, take the area of the triangle. See, so this is like, okay, way back then, you didn't say anything if you didn't. Now, here's proof you should have, maybe. Right, because that's what that was about. Okay, so what's the area of that triangle? It's definitely not 800. It's 400. Right, the second most frequent answer. Okay, but more important than this stuff about triangles, I mean, this is the final step to getting the number to demonstrate you understand the concept. But I guarantee you're going to have a low success rate all semester long if you just memorize, oh, consumer surplus, that's that triangle between demand and price. Well, yeah, it is. But if you just stuff all of that in your head with a bunch of other things that you don't understand why it is or what it means, you'll get confused and out of sync and all of that. What is consumer surplus? Okay, that upper bar, remember that from that old graph about the president's consumer surplus, that big old bar here? That says there's somebody out here who is willing to pay a lot higher price than the one they're able to pay. Okay, and so they're gaining a lot from this opportunity. Consumer surplus, it's been named. I regret the name. It's kind of a bizarre name, but it's what it's called. Okay, and then there's somebody else out there who is only barely willing to pay $14 to buy a unit of this good. Little teensy weensy gain from trade, right? Their willingness to pay is only a little bit above the 14. Okay, so the area of the triangle is a way to add all of the consumer surpluses for all the people that buy the good together, all in one fell mathematical swoop, so that we don't have to do up to 80 calculations. Right, 80, if everybody purchases one unit of the good, we'd have to take each of their gains from trade and add it up. I'd have to add 80 things together. We could do that, it works. Yeah, like in that slide, I'll get to when I get back to see that's the. I wish I could go back and forth between the PowerPoint. I'll show that in a minute. So we could do that, but so when you take the area of the triangle, it's important for you to understand why it's the area of the triangle and what it means. Okay, otherwise you'll have a bunch of misunderstood, disassociated things you memorized packed in your brain, and you won't know when to retrieve them under the pressure of, hey, you got 80 minutes to do 50 or 60 questions, because that's about what you'll have on September 15th. Yes? I'm sorry? Figure it out, or how did I know to put the graph like this? Okay, so this side of the triangle is 10, 24 minus 14, and this side is 80. Okay, so 10 times 80, and then divide by 2, because it's a triangle. If you don't divide, maybe that's what a lot of people did. They knew it was a triangle and forgot to do the divide by 2. Okay, if you don't do the divide by 2, here's what you just took the area of. Twice as much is what you have. All right. I'm asking, not telling when I say that. Okay, move on to the next one. Boy, we're getting some serious value out of this top hat thing, because a lot of stuff's going by here with lots of nodding and smiling back at each other, and then whoops, we ask the question, is no, we didn't get it. Okay, so now you've already got the graph drawn. Same information. See, here's sort of a test of, do you know what P and Q actually stand for? What they actually mean? And I discovered before class, I had little blanks in here for this question. It doesn't show the blanks. So I have colons now. Spending on X will be blank. The goods total value to society will be blank. Colon there instead of a blank. Good idea to use that paper, Tyler? Yeah. See, you're doing the air thing, and maybe that works best for you, and that's ultimately your choice, but I recommend writing it down. Okay, so talk your way through it. When you spend money on something, what determines that? How much of it you buy and the price per unit, right? Okay, well, there you go. And why do you buy it? Because its value to you is more than what you had to pay for it. See, that's that total value to society thing. What's the difference between its value to you and what you have to pay for it? It's called, what was it called, the slide before? Hello. Consumer surplus, right? That's the difference between what you pay for it and what it's worth to you. All right, how are we doing? We're see, this is one of the, okay, how about, so some of you, shut up, I just do this question, okay. Tough. All right, now we're kind of dragging our way along here. Let's move forward here and do the report thing. Okay, so let's see. All right, so 80 units were purchased per the time period at $14 each. So I forgot to redo the math before class. I think 14 times 80 is 1120, so I think that's correct. Okay, that's what you should have done, right? Price times quantity is total expenditure or total revenue, depending on whose side of the market you're on. Okay, and then the second number has to be bigger right? Because on top of that, you're saying, okay, what was the consumer surplus? So that would be the, whoops. I think I messed this one up. Yeah, it's, I'm sorry, A is the right answer. Yeah, not C. C made the same, and I made the same mistake there temporarily as many of you made on the previous one. All right, the consumer surplus was 400, not 800. See, I forgot to divide by 2 there on this round. Okay, so A is the correct answer. And it has the same 1120 there as the first blank. Okay, but the second blank is 400 bigger. That's the consumer surplus. Right? That's why 1120 was spent on the good, because the value to the purchaser was 1520. Purchasers in combination was 1520. More Q&A. Okay, all over the map here. So and so you're getting a little bit of a sense for how I separate those who know from those who just thought they did and memorized what they didn't understand. See, here's where you would say, okay, consumption complements. What did I park in my head for that? Oh, peanut butter and jelly. Oh, those are consumption complements. Okay? See, so then you think about it in those terms. Price of peanut butter goes up. Okay, so you look at it and say, oh, this is a peanut butter and jelly question. Still all over the map. Trying to remember the question here. Go back to it. Okay, X and Y are consumption complements. Okay, so if the price of peanut butter goes up, the demand for jam and jelly goes down. Okay, so B, not B and C. Demand for X decreases? No. No, that's one of those semantics, quantity demanded versus demand things again. Okay, the demand for X is not decreased by the price of it increasing. The quantity demanded would be. Okay, let me go back to the reports and then way back there. Yes. Yell. Yeah, I didn't say anything about quantity demanded there. Sorry, my hearing just isn't that good. Okay. Okay, so for C to be correct, what would have to happen for, okay, so this is X, peanut butter. Okay, and so a change in the price of X. Right, well that's, okay, so that's just going to move you up and down, no shift. Okay, but for Y, that would be the jam and jelly. Okay, what happens here? Starting point S0, D0. Okay, so again, what was it again? The price of, remember which one of the, which price of X increases, that's right. So the demand, does the demand increase? No, okay, because they're used together. Okay, so what happens is right? The demand for jam and jelly decreases. So there's a shift. Now you could, if the question wanted to, if I were to redo it for the exam, what does this do? It reduces the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied in this area here. Now, that was my best attempt at answering what I thought your question was, but I admit I only barely heard it. I may not have heard it well. So try again, only louder if I didn't get it the first time.
What I think you were saying was that, like, the price only changes the quantity demanded. It doesn't actually shift the demand curve.
Right. For the good itself, X, a change in the price doesn't shift the line.
But the complement, it shifts it.
For the complement, it changes it, because the price of other things is a shifter for Y. But for X, the price of X is not a shift. The thumb went up. Cool. All right. You see what happened here? I wrote this up just before class. Exactly. The demand for what? Okay. The slide on the PowerPoints just before I switched to this there's some stuff about charcoal bricks in India. Okay, so that's the issue here. Charcoal bricks are widely used in India for heating. I forgot the charcoal bricks in here. Okay, so that's the question here. Increasing income in India will blank charcoal bricks for home heating. Okay, and then A, B, C, or D, are the choices. Charcoal bricks is the good. They're used for heating in India. Yes. Is the increase permanent or temporary? What do you mean? Which increase?
Like, is it like you got a bonus on your paycheck, or like everyone's now getting like $20 an hour?
Assume it's permanent. Yeah, that issue gets into some pretty advanced economics, actually, about permanent income hypothesis. Milton Friedman developed that. Oh, well, no one's ever asked that before. That's a good question. Yeah, is it permanent or temporary? I assume permanent. Ah, you've nailed the essence of the issue. That's all I'm not going to say. Okay, we're way up there. All right, cool. Okay, please, no A's or B's, because income is definitely a demand shifter. Okay, if you put A or B, serious retooling needed. Now, you didn't read the chapter yet, and you do that the night before the exam. Hey, if that works for you, more power to you, but 11 people. Okay. Ouch. Okay, income is a demand shifter, right? It's on the list for demand shifters, not on the list for supply shifters. This is one of the common mistakes that's made because you're used to thinking like a consumer, you're thinking, okay, that affects the supply of the good. No, the supply is about production-related factors. Yeah, it could increase the quantity supplied, sure. The more people want to go out and buy it, yeah. But it doesn't change the supply of the good any way, shape, or form. Okay, and then Tyler, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, so the answer is E, right? Yeah. You see, it depends on how inferior or not for how many people at this instant it is, it being the charcoal bricks. Can you imagine heating your home with an open flame with charcoal bricks? You wouldn't do that if you didn't have to, right? Right? If the alternative wasn't freezing to death. Okay, so clearly at some point, for anybody, at some income level, that becomes an inferior good, right? Okay, and the issue for this question is, okay, does this income increase push enough people beyond that level to cause the demand overall to increase, or the demand or not, and thus decreases the demand? If it pushes enough people, it decreases the demand, and if it doesn't, if people are still below that and they have more money, they buy more charcoal bricks, right? Okay, so my poorly edited attempt at this question, hopefully somewhat rescued here, is a very significant brain-teasing, getting at the core of the issue question. Okay, the answer is E, because inferior goods is a potential thing for everybody for some things. It depends on where you are, where your tastes and preferences are, but where you are compared to that income threshold where you say, enough of that, I'm switching to something better. Or if you're not up to that point yet and you're still kind of shivering, you're saying, wow, I have some more money, I can buy some more charcoal bricks and not be as cold. Q&A, right? This one's a deep one, okay, relatively. So, good, quick Q&A.
How do you distinguish between whether it was a normal good or an inferior good if both income increases?
You can't. See, that's the point. And that's the key point here, is there are a lot of goods that are at some income point become inferior for some people. And if you want to characterize it as an inferior good, what you're saying, in essence, is that for most people, if their income goes up, they'll buy less of it. Well, I mean, I may tell you for a question, this is an inferior good, and that's what I'm saying. Or I may ask like this, and then you're supposed to know what we just talked about, namely that any given good is normal for some people and inferior for others, depending on where their income level is compared to their switch point income level. So that's the issue here. Okay? If somebody alleges that something's an inferior good, what they're alleging is that for most people, they're over that switch point. And their higher income will make them buy less. That's what they're saying. And that's why I clarified it, because that's not said in the book. It doesn't say that in the book anywhere. It's important to understand that. A good can't just be inferior, period, for all people at all times. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. People would not have ever purchased any of it. If at any income level you buy less, then there would be none of it purchased. Right? That's what I mean, wouldn't exist. Right? If your income went up from $1 to $2 and that made you buy less, you couldn't have purchased much to begin with, right? None, probably. Okay? So inferior goods are goods that for most people will cause them to buy less if their income goes up, and vice versa. So a couple of really good questions, several good questions. Okay, I think I have another one. Do I have another one? Yes. Yeah, okay. Here I did okay. See that last slide before we switched to these questions also said something about mopeds. You could tell that the statement, which was about rising fuel prices, shows that between the writing of the book and the editing and the production of it, some big things happened in the oil market, right? Because that was the predominant thing that was going on when this book was in production, was oil prices were high and rising. Things change. Yes?
Looking at the moped as like a substitute for a motorcycle or as like a complement to it?
Let's not get into that yet. Look at it how you think it should be looked at, and see that you've identified another potential reason in cases of getting it wrong. to protest it and to recover credit. You can say, well, here's my assumption, and Doc, it was reasonable. And I say, yeah, it was reasonable. But I'm trying to think here on the fly whether you can pull that off here. It's a tiny motorcycle. It's, there's room for question protest here because, well, it does use oil products. But, so you have to make assumptions about mobility probably, the need for it or the desire for it. Yeah, I guess the operative assumption here is the vast majority of people need to be able to get around more than where they can walk. So the question is how. All righty. So let's before we check the reports here, let's see. The moped market. Okay, falling oil prices will do what? I think it'll make people buy more of them. You know, if I saw a crystal ball that said that and I believed it, I'd go out and buy moped stock. How about you? Right? Think of it that way. Speaking of which, a little story, and we'll conclude on this. We don't have enough time to get back into the supply part of the market. This happened a long time ago, before some of you were born. But I was an economist already then. Doggone it. I lived in Hawaii at the time, which the reason that matters is because it's several time zones away from New York. So I woke up, turned the radio on, and I think this is like February 1980 something. Yeah, so before most of you were born. But anyway, if you remember from Texas history, that's when the price of oil really crashed and plunged the Texas economy into a pretty king-size recession in the mid-1980s. Anyway, so this report comes out, and by then it's like noon New York time. I'm eating breakfast, 7 o'clock in Hawaii. So I turned my radio on, and here's this report. I ran to the telephone. I had a stockbroker, luckily. And I said to him, hey, what's the price of, pick something that I might think of investing in as a result of this tanking of oil prices. We just discussed it a few minutes ago as one of the answers. Anyway, all right. So we're running short on time. I said to my stockbroker, what's the price of Winnebago stock? Okay. Why? Consumption complement, right? Big gas guzzler, especially then. They were even less efficient then than they are now. So I'm thinking lower oil prices, people are going to go run out and buy a motorhome. Big increase in the stock. Yeah, so I'm thinking that. But beware, in the stock market, things can happen fast. Because I asked one more question that saved me a lot of money. Also made me cry and made me wish I woke up in New York and Hawaii. Anyway, so his answer to my question is, it's $17 a share. And I said, what did it open at? $10 a share. If I'd lived in New York, I'd almost doubled my money in 4 hours. I didn't have much money then, but anyway, that would have been a lot. Now, so if I purchased it right at noon, New York time, when I got up in Hawaii, it probably hits and then probably goes down a little bit with profit taking. I would have lost a bunch of money. But if I had awakened in New York and ran to my phone and said, buy, every penny of mine you can get your hands on, buy, and sold at noon, I would have made 70% minus brokerage fees. A lot. Okay? Consumption complements, right? Can be pretty useful, along with a few other tips to investing. Okay? If it's consumption substitutes, of course, it would have been the opposite, is like get your money out of those stocks, right? Right? Because the lower oil prices are going to tank those. All right. Any more comment on these last? Let's go back into the supply thing for 4 minutes. We have 4 minutes left. Let's do that. Close. I think that was the last one there. And chapter 3 doesn't take that long to get back in here. Present. Just kind of to show where we're leaving off. Okay. And let's see. So where do we leave? Let me go back. I refer to this slide. Here's what I wanted to do. That's it. Okay. Because see, a lot of you struggled with that consumer surplus thing. Okay. Now here was this slide and one just like it in the book. What was it about your approach to this slide and the one in the book that caused you to draw a blank or just do it wrong when it came time to the rubber hitting the road? Maybe you better figure that out to improve your study practices, your preparation practices. Right? That's called going back and figuring out why it didn't work. Right? Let me go back to the other slide that I referred to without being able to go to it. Let's see. Okay, that's this one. See, here's the one with about the mopeds and the charcoal bricks. That's the one we switched. So the next slide is that one. We're going to hit supply, and we're going to finish it on Thursday because there's a homework on Chapter 3 due Sunday midnight as usual. And so anyway, here's the one that talked about economic growth in India, raising incomes. Automobiles is a normal good, right? Okay, so increased demand, no problem. Charcoal bricks, it doesn't say one way or the other, but you could surmise just from the name that that's not an ideal way to heat your home. And so high enough income, you wouldn't do that. Maybe you surmised it, maybe you didn't. I'd be a little more clear about it in a test question. But here, no problem. Leaving a few things a little fuzzy for you to have to assume. Because see, many of you are thinking of making economics a significant part of your career. You better get used to figuring out what to assume. That's the central to being effective as an economist. Figure out what to assume, make it as little as possible, make it as unheroic as possible, and then be consistent with it. Big deal. Okay, and so then it talks about the mopeds and the price of oil rises. Well, if and when it rises again, that will be good for the moped market. We're done. Now it is 9:45.